good to see you and CoreWeave on stage. I was under the impression that everybody knew about CoreWeave. In fact, your company was described on stage just before lunch as, without doubt, one of the best near-cloud companies in the world. It transpires that not everyone's up to speed with CoreWeave. Is that the case? Set out your stall.
I think it is, and thanks everyone for turning up, and thank you for inviting me. I think one of the things about CoreWeave is that it's a business which in the US has got an awful lot of name recognition on account of it going public last year. So it was probably one of the first IPOs to go in 2026. So it got an awful lot of news and coverage that way. But as a business, what it is, it's a business which is really born and designed for this time and this place, which is a business which is focused entirely on building and developing an AI cloud. So it's a business which develops and owns a cloud which people can run their AI workloads on. And that's something which is, it's a new step from where people have been historically to where they are today. And so as a business, it's grown from, it's 250 people in Europe, it's 2,500 people, probably nearer to 3,000 people in across the world. It builds and operates over 50 data centers across the world, but this real differentiator is this cloud that it runs. And the reason that it's a differentiator is that the AI workloads that we're now seeing operating all over the world and all the noise that you're hearing, these are very different workloads to what we class as traditional workloads which run at different data centers. And as the market develops and as we get our name out there more and more, you probably won't hear of CoreWeave as much as you will know most of our customers. So another sort of stat that we use is that 9 of the 10 largest labs in the world rely on CoreWeave for their infrastructure. So that's why the name may not be known, but the technology, when you're running your models yourselves, there's a pretty good chance that you're actually running it on the CoreWeave stack.
You touched upon the utterly exponential growth at the moment and demand. I'm interested in maybe you setting out from your perspective what that's looking like in Europe compared to America right now.
I think the demand cycle that you see, and I sit in a very privileged position in a privileged business. And when you look at demand, I think we hear demand signals and they come from our customers. So the main demand signal we take is not from the media, it's not from the financial press, it's from the customers that we talk to every day. And the data points that I use to give you a feel for demand is that when we went public last year in March, we had $23 billion of open order book. That's $23 billion worth of customer orders who wanted us to deploy, who wanted to consume our cloud. One of the concerns at the IPO was that was concentrated at 70% with one customer. And that's too much concentration risk. So we made a decision to let's diversify the customer base, but let's continue to grow. So 6 months later, we went from 23 billion of open order book to 55 billion of open order book. And the concentration of customers went from 70% to no one customer being bigger than 30%. And so that was by the end of September last year, which was pretty impressive growth. If you fast forward to where we are in the end of March, when we announced our earnings a few months ago, we have 99 billion of open order book, and we still have a similar concentration, lower concentration of largest customers. So those demand signals give you an idea of the growth that we're seeing, but I think it also should give the industry confidence as to how much demand there is for the infrastructure and the cloud that is being built.
So you're a bit busy then?
I mean, I sleep between about 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't help that a lot of the business is based on the west coast of the US as well, but it keeps us, it's keeping me busy.
Something we were chatting about earlier, which I think touches on what you've just said, there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of also failure to delivery. It's an awful lot harder to build a cloud than a rack of GPUs, isn't it? Does it concern you about the, should we say, lack of delivery in the market right now?
I think this is a market where there's a huge amount of opportunity. And I think that one thing that we are looking in CoreWeave as we move through this unbelievable growth phase is that the focus now is entirely on execution. Everything we do is focused on execution and delivery. I'm a privileged position. I don't wake up in the middle of the night worrying about demand, worrying about where the next sale is coming from. I wake up in the middle of the night wondering, how am I going to deliver? We currently have around about a gigawatt of active power, so that's a gigawatt of actual delivering power, which is actually delivering to our customers. That's really what we focus on. What we don't focus on, and especially in Europe and in the US as well, we've stopped talking about what we're going to do, and we now only really talk to people about what we've done. And I think that as an industry, that's a real focus that everyone needs to come to. I think when people are looking at partners, when they're looking at who in this ecosystem they're going to work with, one of the first things I'm looking at is, have you done it before? Where have you done it before? Where have you completed it? Where can I see real tangible evidence? As opposed to, oh, I could do this and I might do this, or I promised I'm going to do this. For me, a lot of the selection in the industry comes down to who's executed, who's actually done, who's delivered, because otherwise you end up in a hype cycle where everyone's talking about the future, the future, the future. And I think that's not good for the industry, and I don't think it's good for the participants who are delivering.
So what would you say a neo cloud has to deliver in 2026, and dare you look forward to 2027, that a general purpose cloud has never delivered?
It's like
what does an AI cloud need to deliver now, today, and tomorrow, compared to before?
I think what you're delivering today is you're delivering first of all, the most important thing we have is speed. Probably the greatest currency in this market is speed. Speed to market, speed to delivery, speed to construction. And with AI, as with many things in the last 6 to 12 months, there's been a huge compression in speed. So can you actually deliver what you're saying you can deliver, and can you deliver it at pace? The second thing you have to deliver is most customers aren't just looking for infrastructure. They're not just looking for infrastructure, things plugged in together. They're looking for a cloud that they can actually run workloads on. So infrastructure is just one part of the stack. If we were just an infrastructure company, life would be relatively straightforward. But if you actually look at where CoreWeave is really spending its own capital, where it's investing most heavily, is actually in building the engineering layer, building the orchestration layer, building the software layer, and building that cloud that means that our customers who we have and the new customers we're getting, they're actually coming not just for the access to the GPU, but they're actually access to the cloud, access to the workload, access to the ability to stand things up really quickly.
Well, if demand doesn't keep you awake at night, what does keep you awake at night? Are there, for example, procurement issues with all the geopolitics going on, or are there local whatever issues where you operate that are restraining your development?
If you look at sort of supply chain versus, I can answer it in two ways. One is the supply chain, one is the local politics.
Sure.
So I think on the supply chain side of things, there's always going to be, I used to work in renewable industry, and yet there's always been supply chain problems around transformers, there's always been long lead time items. That just requires people to be committed, to plan, to know if they're going to be building, to commit to get the orders in, commit to have the capital available to make sure that those things can happen. Developers who have a site, maybe an offer from a grid, but they haven't tied up their lead time items, it's a critical part of it. You need to have that, and you need to manage that supply chain. Obviously, access to GPUs is important. We're in a privileged position through the work that we've done and the partnerships that we have good access to that. Storage as well continues to be a shortage. You have to manage that. That's part of managing any business has supply chain constraints, and you need to do that. And we quite often work with the guys who are building the data centers for us, that we'll lean into their supply chain, we will help them, we'll support them, because their success is our customer's success. And everything we do is focused on how do we actually deliver success for our customers, and then we work back from there, work from the customer, and what do we need to do with our partners to deliver what we need to deliver. On the politics question, and you can break that into national and you can break it into local. National politics, the UK government's been extremely vocal in its support of the AI ecosystem with the AI growth zones. We've built 2 sites in the UK. We're operating them at the moment, one in Docklands and one in Crawley, and we're also building one in Scotland as well. So that's great having top cover political support. on the local level, speaking about Europe, there's a little bit of noise coming from the local level. There's actually more noise really right now in the US around this, which you read about quite a lot. But a big part of local politics is early engagement and genuine and practical engagement, not just saying, hey, I'm going to help build I'm going to build a local play park for the kids. It's actually, how can you get into these local areas and really genuinely support? In Scotland, where we're building in Chapel Hall, we're supporting the local AI ecosystem. We're working with our ventures fund to work with the local entrepreneurs, help them understand how they can build and scale their businesses, help them understand how to get access to compute, and really sort of working to help a flywheel in the local ecosystem. A couple of weeks ago, we were in Barcelona. We flew 60 young entrepreneurs under the age of 25 into Barcelona for a 24-hour period to get them together to work as teams. Again, we mentor them, we help them, we give them availability of compute. All of those things build the ecosystem, and all of those things really support growing in Europe. Because I think a big thing I believe in is, and I say this to policymakers a lot, let's really give Europe a bit of pride back. Let it believe that all of its founders don't have to go to the US. They can stay here. We can help fund them. We can help finance them. We can help them build out more and more. And that's sort of a big part that we do. So you can manage all those little things as long as you work in a cohesive manner.
So on the one hand, you've got a very savvy approach to integrating your industry into civic society, and on the other hand, you have all the other restraints and difficulties that all of us face with power and supply chain and everything else. How about the finance side of that? Because of the restraints and difficulties that you have, I mean, has CoreWeave, I shouldn't ask this question, but I mean, in terms of how do you see finance supporting at the moment? Is it difficult to finance these superstructures?
I think one thing that's important to know about this industry is the numbers are eye-watering. So let's start there. If we talk about the amount that we've invested in the UK, I think we did 2.2 billion in 2025, and I think with the Scottish site we're doing, it's going to be another 1.5 billion. So these are big numbers. Yeah. They're big numbers that are coming through. And then as I say, we're at about 50 data centers worldwide. So do the math. That's a lot of cash. What CoreWeave has also built, in the way it's built its cloud for this moment, it's also built a financing engine for this time. And we've done a number of things through access to financial markets. And one of the reasons for this is that the founders have got very much an East Coast financial market background. So it's that East Coast financial market background which understands how lending works. If you think about lending, I have a model in my head where if you go to the West Coast of the US, they give you money, they expect you to spend it, and hopefully you get 10% or 20% give them the money back. And that's how that model works. If you go to the East Coast finance, people give you money, but you bloody well better give it back to me. You bloody well better give it back to me with the right interest rate. And so what we built is a series of financing structures where we finance the biggest cost in building a data center is the compute, is the hardware. So we've built financing structures which allow us to borrow against the value of the hardware. So we put these innovative structures in place, which means that we actually can draw debt in and help us pay for the compute. But that's usually going to be supported by a contract on the other side with either a hyperscaler or a number of other customers who are then going to be our customers taking the compute off us. So we actually have a really solid and rigid financial structure which says, yes, someone's going to lend me money, but I've also going to put a contract in here where someone's got 5 or 6 years commitment to buy the product, to buy the cloud. Yep. And the cash comes in from the customer, and it then goes out and it pays the lease, it pays the bank, it pays this, it pays that. And if there's some left at the bottom, then it comes back into CoreWeave. And that's how we manage to essentially run the business in a way which is a secure, really well risk managed structure in such a way as to be able to cover the unit economics of what we're building. And these aren't, when we're not selling these funders, we're going to the Blackstones and the BlackRocks of the world, some of the bigger funds. These are the most sophisticated credit houses in the world. Yeah. And these are the people who are coming in, spending time with us, understanding the business and saying, based upon that, I can see a secure future revenue stream. And that revenue stream takes us from a position 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, where we were paying 15% roughly cost of money, to the latest time we've done that, and we're paying around about 6 or 7% cost of money. So you can really drive that cost of capital down with the correct financing structures, which is part of the fuel that we have to fuel the growth that I talked about to start with. We can work with that supply, and we can then deliver it we can work with the demand, and we can then create the supply to deliver what the outcome the customer wants, which makes it a very exciting place to be.
Well, I was just about to say, with an eye on the clock, any questions? Your opportunity to put a question to CoreWeave, and Ben says he doesn't mind any type of question. Careful. Any hands? There's one. Have we got a microphone? Thank you, Denise.
You can just shout if you want.
It's just technology. There we go. So just so people can hear, the basic premise is how disruptive is your business model to existing data center models?
I think that the business model that we run is it disruptive? I think what it does is it gives us a fuel, and it gives us an ability. The financing that we have and the approach that we take and the speed that we take to execution is, I think, the most disruptive thing that we have. Within CoreWeave, we have a conviction, and we've had a conviction for many years, that A, what we're doing is right, B, what we're doing is done in an efficient and risk-managed fashion. And next to some other players in the market, whether they're the hyperscalers or other, we have an ability to act and to move really, really quickly. When you have a founder-led business which is 6 or 7 years old, you're in a position where you can look across the table and say, if we do the following, here's the 4 risks. Risk. That risk is there, that risk is there, this risk is left. Do we want to take that risk? We can mitigate it in the following 6 ways. Dun, 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 dun. You look at each other, and okay, we'll do it. And then you walk out the room and you execute. And I think that's one of the things which is probably one of the most disruptive things that we have, is that ability to really operate quickly. Because one of the real currencies, and I think in this market, is speed. Because if you, I sat at GTC. On stage earlier, you talked about GTC. I sat at GTC this year, and the number of people who came in wanting compute. I'd like 10,000 GPUs. I'd like 10,000 GPUs. In order for us to be able to operate and to satisfy that demand, we have to be able to understand the risks in front of us, understand the financing landscape. Can I do it? Understand the partners in the ecosystem that I'm working with. Is this person going to deliver on time? What do they need? Going diligently into their supply chain, and then being able to turn around and say, yes, we'll do it, and then you just go. And one of the things that we do very well is just going in a controlled, thoughtful, but high-velocity manner. So,
I think we fixed the microphone. There's another question, sir.
Expansion plans or new technology or business models that you're trying?
So are there new technologies that we're trying?
New business models that you're trying, or expansion plans?
There's 2 things. So, I mean, I'd look at sort of 2 or 3 things there. So, we're a US-based company, so the majority of the innovation probably comes out of the US in the first instance. So, for example, when we came to Europe, what did we do? We started with co-location. And then as we've grown out, we did that in both the UK and in Spain, which is the first place we went to. But then as we've stayed, if I use Spain as an example, we've continued to work in Spain, and then you go from co-location to actually working with a developer into a powered shell. If you look at what we're doing in the US now, in the US, they're looking also towards breaking ground themselves. Now, there's enough work to be done internationally without having to go to self-build right now. So if I want speed, and I've got partners that I agree with and I believe in, I don't need to go into self-build. If I want to go to a jurisdiction where I don't have a partner, then do I back myself to build in a new jurisdiction, or do I find a partner in a jurisdiction? And those are the types of decisions, sort of as part of a strategy team as well as the international team, those are some of the decisions you start to look at as you try to work through other business models. We talked about, I mean, that's probably the easiest way, but we're always looking to innovate and do things differently. And I think that's a real privilege we have, is that we're able to, we know what we can do well, but we know that if we keep doing it the same way, everyone else will do it the same way. So you're always innovating, you're always looking for something new. If it's new jurisdictions, new ways of doing it, new ways of partnering, and that's kind of that's what keeps it fresh. Because once you've built 49 and 50 data centers, 51, it's not that much fun. You're always looking for something new.
One more question. Okay, one more question over there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, hi, Ravinder Shant from FRV PowerTech. We build power infrastructure. So one of our basic concerns is, all this demand coming, are there going to be stranded assets? Will they ever come? And from your point of view, you talked of demand, and there is a demand for compute, so you are building the data centers. Do you see that growing multifold if we see the number of data centers being announced? Or are we seeing a risk of a lot of these data centers never being built because, build it and they will come, that didn't just really work?
I can really speak on that to what I see and what I know, which is we don't build it and hope that they'll come. So from a CoreWeave perspective, we have a demand. We have the demand signal, so we build it and we build into that demand signal. I can't speak for others as to whether or not people are building on spec expecting it to come. I do know that there are data centers and there are data centers. There are AI and GPU-based data centers and AI and GPU-based data centers. A key thing that you need is, I believe, is the cloud on top of it. It's the cloud that makes it sticky. It's the cloud that people want to come and use. If that software layer, that orchestration layer is strong, if that is useful, that is the thing that people are going to want to demand and get. And so I think that's key. If your question then becomes about stranded power, it's a kind of slightly different question. But I do believe if you look at where we are in the cycle, I would suggest that, to use the baseball analogy, I could have a conversation with you over a beer if we're at the bottom of the first or the top of the second. But that's kind of where I am and that's not a test match analogy, that's a baseball analogy. So we're still early in the cycle. And I do believe that, it's a really important thing to me that we see success. It's really important to me that every player in this market is successful. Will they all be successful? Who knows? It stands to reason some may not be. But it's about those that are in the market building in a responsible manner to know the risks they're taking and to understand those underlying risks. And usually you'll find that banks and others will then, the finance will normally follow the well-risk managed businesses.
And just one last thought, Ben. Looking ahead to 2030, like of course we can hardly look forward to next year. Looking into the future, what will differentiate the winners in AI cloud and the also-rans?
I think it will be driven by customers. It will be driven by what the customer wants.
And delivery.
Delivered, by what the customer wants and what the customer delivers. The winners will be the people that can deliver, and not just deliver GPUs, not just deliver the ability to run training loads, but the ability for customers to be able to run a training load or run an inference load on a cloud or on a stack, and actually be able to tune it, run it, orchestrate it, make sure it runs properly, make sure that it's not wasted, make sure that the whole thing operates. And for me, that will be differentiated. It'll be people who can go into the entire ecosystem, work with partners, partner with people and grow together. CoreWeave 3 or 4 years ago was in the main pack of the neoclouds. And I think someone downstairs talked about 150, 200 neoclouds. We're now in a place where we're in a trade-off. It's half the time I'm being asked, what's it like being the largest neocloud? And for the data point on that is if you look at all the GPUs that CoreWeave has deployed across the world, and you count them up, and I know what they are, and then you look at all the GPUs that every other neocloud has, the next 15 neoclouds are deployed and running for customers. If you add all 15 up, we are still more than all that next 15 together. So in the world, we're kind of in a different, there's a neocloud and then there's a hyperscaler. Yeah. And I think that what you're seeing there is as you accelerate away, you're growing with others and bringing others with you. So if our partners can grow with us, we will all succeed together.
And it's the whole partnership bit, which we haven't had time to get into, is exactly the space you're in, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an ecosystem, and you've got to work together, and you work with customers, you work with partners, you deliver what they're looking for, and at the end of it, if that works, no matter if you're NeoCloud 1 or if you're NeoCloud 25, if you can get that and tie that together, there's success. If you can't, if you are building on the hope that people are going to want to take it in the future, that's a high-risk strategy, and it might come off, and I hope it does. But that becomes much harder as people discover that's harder to finance, that's harder to run, that's hard to deliver, and it comes with its own problems.
It sounds like you're in a much more comfortable space. Ben, thanks a million. It's been a whistle-stop 25-minute tour, but thank you very much indeed for those insights. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Ben.
Thank you.